stock snapped a 3-day winning streak as disappointing forecasts from Facebook and Instagram parent Meta hammered tech. Both US Q1 GDP data and more big tech earnings are scheduled for later in the day. But for now, it was Meta's 15% after hours price fall that is souring the mood. In an earnings-packed week, tech bellwethers are in the spotlight with Alphabet, Microsoft and Intel due to report. London's FTSE 100 hit another record high as UK-listed miner Anglo American surged 11% on a buyout offer from Aussie rival BHP. To give us more perspective on the fundamentals in terms of market activity, we are joined by Simpiwe Letlajana, who is from ABSA Investments. Simpiwe, thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about what's driving markets as you look at your screen.
Thank you for having me, Natasha. We're seeing our local markets, they're trading relatively flat today, moderately in the red, down about 0.1%. Seeing financials also trading fairly flat, whilst industrials are actually in the red, so they're down about 1%. And the sector that is holding up today is resources, up about 2%. And when we're looking at some of the big movers, of course, we're seeing Anglo American, being one of the major movers today, up close to 15% thus far.
So let's talk about that, because we woke up to the news that this deal has been put forward. I mean, they've got until May 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, to actually put an actual deal to it. But let's talk about the why. Is it all about the energy transition or the copper asset or both?
100%. I think it is quite a major one. And of course, when you do look at the underlying businesses, when you look at BHP and Anglo American in terms of their overall commodity exposure, there's quite a lot of overlaps there. But the key one being that copper business, because they're saying that they're looking to essentially acquire the business, but upon acquiring the business, they're looking to unbundle the platinum assets as well as the iron ore assets in SA, so Kumba Iron Ore as well as Anglo American Platinum, and retain, the remaining assets. So potentially looking to scale up on the copper side. And of course, the reason for that is, from a fourth industrial revolution perspective, the likes of copper, lithium are fairly heavily used, in the various components or sectors of the fourth industrial revolution, including semiconductors, AI, electric vehicle production, battery production, etc.
When you look at some of the big tech earnings that we got out of the US so far, have they lived up to expectations?
Definitely has been a bit of a mixed bag as far as tech is concerned. Of course, yesterday we saw, earnings results from Meta. So from a performance perspective, in terms of the first quarter, decent results. So revenue growing by double digits and in line with market expectations, earnings doubling, and also actually surprising markets positively. But what did come as a little bit of a disappointment to markets was, the upward revisions to guidance on spending, so expenses as well as capex. As the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, continues to announce that, they're looking to plow some capital into, new AI projects, as well as, of course, the metaverse, which is still a little bit loss-making at the moment. And of course, investors questioning that move, particularly from a cost versus benefits analysis perspective, where the benefits are certainly a little bit unclear and uncertain at the moment, as well as, of course, definitely not necessarily expected to materialize over the short term.
Are there sectors within the S&P 500 or perhaps even the JSE where we could see some growth?
I think from a growth perspective, we do continue to still expect, your longer duration stocks or your tech sectors, the likes of communication services and, your tech-oriented consumer discretionary. There is still the sectors that are expected to lead from a earnings growth perspective, both globally as well as locally, if you're thinking about, our own tech sectors that are geared toward Chinese exposure and expecting some recovery there. Another sector that we are expecting some positive earnings growth this year is healthcare, but of course healthcare will be rebounding from some of the negative earnings growth that they saw over the past 12 months.
When it comes to inflation, I mean, there's so many narratives moving around. What do you think is the big market question in relation to inflation?
Certainly. I think, of course, we've seen goods inflation continuing to trend in the right direction. So food prices have eased, across most of the regions. Energy prices have also largely eased. Of course, for our local markets and our local economy, the energy prices are also influenced by, currency volatility, so not necessarily moving in line with, your global counterparts. But of course, there are still some upside risks when you're looking at goods inflation, but the key risk still remains services inflation, which is still a little bit higher, anchored higher. So if you're looking at core inflation, especially, for developed counterparts, core inflation is still higher than their headline inflation. And of course, one of the key drivers there being wage growth, that is also still anchored a little bit high, and of course markets looking to see that potentially beginning to weaken in order for us to start ascertaining whether inflation could potentially come down.
Simpiwe, thank you so much for your time. That is Simpiwe Litlojana from Absa Investments. And on the back of the news that we've been talking about literally most of the morning when it comes to Anglo share price, on the back of that proposal from BHP, we're seeing that share price up nearly 16%. But when we look at the other companies that are also listed in that particular statement, Kumba Iron Ore down 5.2%, Anglo American Platinum down 9.5%. So we'll keep you updated in terms of what is happening with this particular transaction and how it unfolds from here. What are some of the hurdles that could come into play, but also markets looking at Click's earnings.